Well, welcome everybody. We know that it is a very busy period, and we are really thankful that you're able to join us today. The Agroecology Coalition is very much delighted to be partnering with the University of Vermont's Institute for Agroecology in putting up the Let's Eat webinar and panel discussion today. This event and this initiative can't be timelier than now. The coalition was set up in 2021 as a multi-stakeholder entity composed of state and non-state actors working to advance food systems transformation through agroecology. Leading to its establishment, we have started to see the increasing interest and momentum in agroecology. We are seeing a growing space for agroecology as food systems take center stage. In the process, the case for transformation has never been more relevant, with a great diversity of actors calling for a shift away from unsustainable, high input food systems that are largely based on crop monocultures towards more diverse, integrated, resilient, and equitable ones, while adopting practices to ensure that all people have access to healthy diets and food environments. And this is where agroecology is coming in. Given its comprehensive, cross-sectoral, transdisciplinary, and systemic nature. Applying agroecological principles and elements addresses not only food security and nutrition, but also climate mitigation and adaptation, reversing biodiversity losses and restoring degraded land and water resources, as well as improving livelihoods, particularly in the rural areas. The multifunctionality is generally neglected when we measure impact. And accommodating multidimensionality across landscapes requires changes in the metrics used to include multiple dimensions, territorial approach, as well as reconfiguration of current architecture of research, education, and extension systems. Transformative change comes from building and upscaling innovative farm and food system models based on agroecological principles and by strengthening capacities of farmers, other food producers, processors, consumers, and market actors. It's underscoring the importance of working through regional, national, and local governments where applicable, as well as with non-state actors, including the academia and education sectors, to promote enabling environments through policies, regulations, practices, and societal institutions such as schools and universities and other training entities to accelerate transformation towards more sustainable food system. As such, in advancing the coalition's strategic objective of facilitating the co-creation and exchange of diverse knowledge, formal, scientific, local, indigenous, traditional, customary, on agroecology, the coalition, through its members and partners, endeavored to foster co-learning, to create further evidence on agroecology's potential and deeply influence all other strategic objectives of the coalition, and activate all key levers of change, investments, policies, markets. We also endeavor to identify and close knowledge, research, education gaps in collaboration with research and education platforms working on agroecology and food systems transformation. We also collectively endeavor to support members' initiatives for effective knowledge sharing, peer-to-peer exchanges, and capacity building in core levers of change that I have just mentioned. So today's webinar and the whole Let's Eat initiative itself really is contributing to this effort of knowledge and skills development through educating and training individuals to handle complex challenges, linking theory to real-world farming, fostering problem solving, and creating future leaders in sustainable food systems. So we really look forward in today's really promising event. And to kick us off, we are flashing here a Mentimeter, and you will see the QR code, and we'd like to invite you to um, to use it or click on the link that you will see in the chat box and kindly respond to the question that you will see there. So we're giving you 1 minute to look into that. The idea really is to think about a few words that comes into your mind as we think about building capacity or education for agricultural transformation. So identify up to 3 keywords that capture the most essential topics for learning programs aimed at preparing the next generation of agroecologists. You have 1 minute to do this. This is exciting. We're seeing some things popping up: territorial, place-based, decoloniality, participation, co-creation, sustainability, worldviews, co-creation. It's interesting to see that what is popping up are really, really consistent and coherent with the different principles of agroecology. And we almost always say that really in the core of agroecology is this co-creation thing. So it's really interesting to see that our audience now, and there are 104 of us from all over the globe, who are putting up their inputs to this. And also, we are having some interpretation in other languages. So feel free to also type in the word in French or in Spanish or any other language if you feel like it. There is interpretation in French, in English, in Spanish, and in Portuguese. So you're also welcome to put in the words in your own native language. So with that, I'm really excited and looking forward to what we'll be hearing from our speakers. And at this point, I'm handing over to you, Colin Anderson. Over to you, Colin.
Thank you, Oliver. Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's great to see such a great turnout and all this energy around higher education and agroecology. My name's Colin Anderson. I'm the co-director at the University of Vermont Institute for Agroecology. I'm also a co-facilitator of the Agroecology Coalition's Research, Innovation, and Education Working Group. At UVM, I teach as a part of our graduate certificate program in agroecology. It's a program that can be taken entirely online or in person. We're also developing an online master's program that's expected to launch next year. Over the last decade, in these programs at UVM, we've been reflecting deeply about pedagogy and learning in different contexts, including in higher education. And so that's the focus of this webinar and has been the focus of a community of practice called Let's Eat or Let's Educate for Agroecological Transformations. The group is made up of almost 40 or almost 50 educators and program directors from higher education institutions across 13 different countries from around the world. Over the last 2 years, we've been exploring what transformative learning for agroecology looks like in different contexts and trying to deepen our practice around that. We gave a series of online webinars last year featuring different programs, their strengths, the challenges they're facing, the theories of change that underpin their work, and what transformative agroecology education looks like in those contexts. So those are recorded and available on our website, which you can find in the chat. I hope someone will post it there. Throughout this process, we've also been discussing the dimensions and approaches to pedagogy that we feel align with a transformative agroecology. So over the last year, after we delivered those webinars, we've been meeting every second month to explore different aspects of learning for agroecology to deepen our practice or our praxis as teachers and educators. So I want to share a few reflections and emerging issues that I feel are worth keeping in mind as you listen to the panelists in this webinar and some of the learnings that we've been drawing out of our experience over the last few years with Let's Eat. So first, there's a growing interest in higher ed and agroecology. As agroecology has grown and become more legitimate broadly, higher education has become a site of possibility to deepen agroecology. The Agroecology Coalition identified some 300 odd programs in an initial scan across the world. So quite a number of programs that have some element that's connected to agroecology. Yet learning for agroecology requires careful consideration for how learning itself and programs align with the 13 principles, the 10 elements, and the transformative politics of agroecology. So this entails moving beyond conventional top-down teaching approaches, going beyond the typical emphasis on agronomic practices and techniques found in many agricultural programs, by centering questions of power. And transformative programs and pedagogies are concerned not only with changing farming techniques, but with transforming policy, planning, science, economies in order to bring about more just and sustainable food systems. So to this end, it's really also important for programs to be rooted in their territories, contributing directly to processes of change through reciprocal relationships with local actors, while also learning and thinking about how that work connects with global processes and global movements. So, emerging out of the experience of the Let's Eat community of practice, I want to talk about the how, the pedagogical approach to agroecology. So we've been thinking about these three strands of pedagogical work. So it's not just about what is taught, but it's also about how agroecology is taught. That's important. So the first one is that I want to raise. So I'm going to raise three. The first one's transdisciplinary learning. The second one is experiential learning, and the third one's critical pedagogy. So transdisciplinary learning recognizes that to tackle complex food system challenges and to approach food systems with an ecological, social, cultural, economic, and political lens, that it's really important to think about transdisciplinary ways of knowing. This doesn't come naturally, and in fact, disciplinary thinking has been the norm in academic institutions and reinforced through the way that agriculture is taught and the way lots of things are taught. So, education for agroecological transformation really needs to think about transdisciplinary ways of teaching, how we engage in a dialogue of knowledges and help people think about how to look across in a holistic way, bringing together natural sciences, social sciences, the humanities, and critically indigenous and local knowledge systems. The second one is experiential learning. So, in agroecology education, experiential learning really focuses on embodied learning on farms or in other spaces where students can engage directly with the practical and material dimensions of food systems, the doing of agroecology. It's not only, in this case, it's also not only about putting one's hands in the soil, but these practical experiences of doing agroecology are paired up with reflection and collective learning methodologies that are a really important part of learning agroecology. And the final tradition of pedagogy is critical pedagogy. So we turn to the importance of learning through political education, the focus on political analysis, engagement with ethical commitments, learning that it's not just about what and how, but also about why and for whom. So we turn to critical pedagogy. So this is rooted in learning traditions of educators such as Paulo Freire, Falsborda, and bringing the political dimensions of agroecology to life. Rooted in social justice and liberation, it equips students with the tools to develop a critical consciousness, the capacity to identify systemic inequities, envision alternatives, and become agents of change. This approach emphasizes collective transformation over individual achievement and weaves together feminist, decolonial, anti-racist frameworks, amongst others, ensuring that agroecological education actively seeks to dismantle power imbalances that it seeks to challenge. So those are the three pedagogical approaches, and you'll see elements of these reflected across the panelists that are presenting today. And finally, I want to make one other point. So, advancing education for agroecology is not just about pedagogy and developing new teaching approaches, what I just presented, but as importantly, it's about transforming the norms, the systems, the funding, and cultures within higher education itself. So, we need to work together to legitimize a transformative agroecology approach within higher education and more broadly. And this is going to mean that we need to work with the leadership of universities and the ministries of education and agriculture, working with social movements and communities to co-create the enabling context within which we can build new programs and deepen our existing programs to advance agroecology. So with that, I want to thank you all for coming and hope these remarks are a useful way to set the stage for the panel. The panel is going to advance in two rounds. The first, we're going to hear from four educators working in different programs in different contexts, Helda, Witness, Marion, and David. They'll introduce themselves more fully. We'll then draw out questions from the audience. And so my colleagues, Georgina McAllister and Molly Anderson, are going to be collecting questions. So please pose your questions in the question and answer function, the button at the bottom of your screen. Pose your questions there, and George and Molly are going to be carefully pulling out questions and posing them to the panelists. They'll be orating the questions and posing the questions at the end of the first round. We'll then close that round, and we're going to bring a couple other perspectives in to broaden our thinking and the interventions around this topic. And then we'll open it up again for questions before we close it off. So with that, we're going to hear from each of these first four panelists. And the common question that we've asked them to address is, how does your program seek to contribute to agroecological transformations through your educational efforts? What are the programmatic and pedagogical features that help to connect your program to transformation? We ask the panelists to address these generally and whatever speaks to them from their program that connects with these questions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Helda to kick us off. Thanks, Helda.
Good morning, buenos días, bonjour. Saludos desde el doctorado en agroecología en México. Muchas gracias por esta oportunidad de compartir con ustedes. Nuestro programa es clasificado como nacional porque está integrado por 9 centros públicos de investigación localizados desde las zonas áridas del noroeste hasta las selvas húmedas del sur del este del país. Algo único del programa es que nació de la solicitud en el 2021 del Gobierno de México para impulsar la agroecología como política nacional. Entonces, los centros que decidimos participar vimos en el llamado una gran oportunidad y diseñamos el programa de una forma participativa, con consultas a académicos, a organizaciones de base, a estudiantes. Y nos propusimos formar académicos que a través del pensamiento de la complejidad, la investigación inter y transdisciplinaria y la investigación-acción participativa contribuyan a generar los cambios necesarios para incidir en el bienestar de la sociedad y el ambiente y realizar investigación-acción de nuestro propio proceso. Nuestro programa está dirigido a profesionales con grado de maestría de diversas disciplinas. Solo en la primera generación recibimos a 47 estudiantes provenientes de carreras tan variadas como arquitectura, nutrición, sociología y, por supuesto, biología y agronomía. Durante el primer año deben tomar 3 cursos obligatorios y lo hacen por videoconferencia, lo que permite que nuestros estudiantes se queden en sus territorios y ya los siguientes 3 años, pues entonces se dedican a su investigación, que debe ser con un enfoque interdisciplinario. Pero algo interesante que tal vez hace único nuestro programa es que tenemos un seminario transversal que los estudiantes toman los 4 años. Y ahí lo que hacemos es darles herramientas de desarrollo humano, como manejo de emociones, meditación, manejo del tiempo, resolución de conflictos, facilitación de asambleas, escucha activa y trabajo en equipo. En una pequeña encuesta que realicé preparándome para este seminario entre estudiantes y los profesores del doctorado, me sorprendieron porque las personas señalaron precisamente estas herramientas que les damos en el seminario transversal y en los encuentros presenciales anuales que tenemos, que ven como oportunidades para la transformación agroecológica. Por ejemplo, una profesora dijo: todo ello ha contribuido a la construcción de una comunidad de aprendizaje verdaderamente transformadora para mí. Haber concretado este espacio colaborativo donde prevalece la buena voluntad y respeto a la diversidad de enfoques es un acto en mi andar académico sin precedentes. También les leo el comentario de una de las estudiantes que dijo: al darnos herramientas tanto metodológicas como emocionales, nos permiten crecer como personas. Me he sentido escuchada y cuidada en el proceso y creo que eso impacta directamente en caminar hacia una agroecología transformadora. Así, al responder a la encuesta, algunos dijeron que la agroecología transformadora es aquella que impacta profundamente en las personas, haciéndonos más sensibles, pero también más activas hacia el cuidado de la vida en todas sus formas. Dijeron, una agroecología que sea política, que cuide los procesos y la vida, que ponga a la comunidad al centro y que apueste por otras formas de relacionarnos como seres humanos y con la naturaleza. Significa una posibilidad de reencaminar nuestra relación como personas con la vida en todas sus formas, un compromiso para mirar las heridas y comenzar a sanarlas. Entonces, con estos testimonios, nos hace reflexionar que aunque tenemos todavía muchos ajustes que realizar y madurar, porque este es un programa nuevo que apenas recibimos a la segunda generación, pero al escucharlos nos damos cuenta que algo estamos haciendo bien. Personalmente, yo, Helda Morales, tengo fe que la pedagogía del cariño que estamos implementando permitirá hacer una academia más humana que nos lleve a una agroecología transformadora. Muchas gracias.
Thank you so much, Helda. Really appreciate your really concise and on-point description of the program. So now we're going to turn to, and I have it up, who's next? Right. Thank you. Witness, come on in.
Hello, good
Hi,
day,
Witness. We
everyone.
can hear you.
Okay, thank you. A quick one. I have several slides there, but I'll try to be very brief and avoid speaking to some of the slides. But my name is Witness Kozanayi, and I'm from Zimbabwe. I'd like to share with you some reflections on the participatory action research that we have been doing in this part of the world in an effort to advance agroecology in general and agroecology markets. I'll not delve into the specifics of what we on each of these concepts, but I'll quickly share with you some reflections. But where we're coming from is that there is a general critical shortage of skills to advance scholarship in agroecology in universities in Southern Africa and in Zimbabwe in particular. And the agroecology is also missing in university curricula. You don't find degree programs in agroecology. Then the farmers and their knowledge continue to be marginalized in the development of agroecology. Yet, curiously, in agroecology, we send our farmers and indigenous knowledge in everything that we do. Then, of course, there is a weak university, a general weak university farmer link in the country. So this is the context that gave rise to the work that we're doing. Sorry, next slide. So yeah, so basically we have two approaches that I'm going to reflect on. One is to where we're training farmers as universities in farmer-led research, coming from the background that farmers, as we say in agroecology, need to chart their destination in agroecology, and we want to give farmers a voice. So we're going down to farmers and then training them, and in an effort to make farmers to be part of a movement shaping global ideas, practices, and policy in agroecology. And I have there a favorite quote of mine from Chinua Achebe, where he says, "Until lions have their own historians, the story of the hand will always glorify the hunter." So we're saying in the development of agroecology, farmers need to tell their own stories. But to do that, they need to be trained in research, in data gathering, writing reports, and engaging policymakers. So that's one aspect that we've been focusing on, farmer-led research. But you can't just wake up one morning and make farmers researchers. You need to train them so that they know how to do research. So that's one aspect. I'll go to the next aspect. Next slide. So the next is the other thing that we've been doing is to integrate participatory action research in university curriculum, and also try to connect, to network people that are researchers that are working in the agroecology space. At the moment, it's fragmented. It's an emerging field in my country and Zambia, where I've also done some work. So universities are, everyone is doing their own work. So we've created what we are calling the Zimbabwe Agroecology Knowledge Network, bringing together at least 11 universities. I'm saying at least because some come and go, but we have 11 that have been consistently participating in this space. We also have policymakers, farmers, farmer-led institutions, and all other people participating in this a space where we're trying to advance research in agroecology. And to that effect, we have 3 thematic groups that we have created. Soil health, there is a group working on soil health, another on African indigenous vegetables and livestock, then a third one working on seed systems. These groups are going to increase over time. A lot is happening in these spaces. And then, of course, we're looking at in developing curriculum, integrating agroecology in universities. As I speak, not a single university in Zimbabwe, we have more than 20 universities, not a single university has a degree program in agroecology. But that is not to say universities are not engaging in agroecology, they do, but it's in a fragmented manner. In one department, you see it housed there as a small component, but we are trying to move to a stage where we have agroecology, degrees in agroecology, and there's some tremendous progress that has been made in that regard. Then, of course, there are some big researches that are being undertaken in agroecology. I've mentioned 2 there. RAINS, which is funded by the EU, and we are part of a consortium in covering about 4 countries. Then the Seed and Knowledge Initiative, another research project that has been ongoing and covering a number of countries in the region. So those are 2 initiatives that we've been doing. Next slide. I'll skip some of this. Anyway, that's participatory action research. I'm sure you are familiar with that. But basically, we're talking about inclusivity, results, and systematic way of generating knowledge. Those are key things that are underpinned, key variables that underpin our training. Then the next one. The next slide. Yeah, I'm sure that you are familiar with that, just the framework that guides us in the work that we do when we go and engage with farmers and train them to be participatory action researchers. Next slide. And then, of course, in all this that we are doing, we have 3 outcomes that we want to do. To have capacitated farmers who are competent to do participatory action research. And we want to make sure that we're also trying to persuade stakeholders that they adopt participatory action research or farmer-led research as a way of doing things. And then, of course, ultimately, farmers need to influence policy and practice. The next slide. Yeah, then to do, like Colin said, it's easier said than done. Training farmers to involving farmers as co-researchers takes a lot of creativity because of challenges that underpin, this engagement. Conventional researchers, there are things that, they know it all, consulted by policymakers and all that. Farmers and agroecology entrepreneurs, they are viewed as ignorant, and sometimes they also don't have the skills. So a lot of challenges that we have to deal with when you talk about when we engage with the farmers. The next slide, I'll go to the last slides. Next slide. Of course, those are hurdles that we encounter, a lot of hurdles, and those are some of the things that we cover. Research, what is it that we do how do we do research? A number of research methods, I'm sure you are familiar with that. Next slide. Data collection, even key reflections. Farmers can be excited about collecting data, but there needs to be as much data that they can collect. Optimal ignorance, only collecting that data that is relevant, garbage in, garbage out. Next slide. Then, of course, writing. We have struggled with engaging farmers as co-researchers, that write their own stories. So writing can make or break, farmer-led research. It can be the elephant in the room because farmers may don't have time or skills, or it can be in a China shop, a culture or whatever that hinder farmers from writing their own stories. Next slide, I'm about to finish. Yeah. So yeah, documenting stories, and that's what I've just been talking about. Farmers document their stories, challenges and opportunities. The next one, I think that's fine. Go to the next slide. Next slide. Okay, next slide. I think those are just opportunities that exist for farmers to overall reflections. What we have gained in terms of what we have realized so far from the work that we've been doing is that participatory action research is gaining momentum in research and policy spaces. We've had farmers that have undertaken research in soil health and have gone to engage policymakers in an effort to influence policy. So it's gaining momentum. and it justifies the participatory action participatory action research justifies itself in many ways. It's liberating, empowering, and it's more chances of success than orthodox research. There's a number of people advancing scholarship on par, but we can learn from them. University of Vermont, we have engaged with them on a number of occasions. We're also learning from them. And to some extent, some par is a research and an art. Farmers really need to engage to be in it themselves. The last slide, I'm sure. Next slide, which is, then I think that's more or less what I've just talked about. Last slide. Yeah, so just to end my slide, I want to end with this quote from Martin Luther King, where he was saying, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, you have to keep on moving. We always tell each other, in this part of the world, when we're talking about participatory action research, that it's a process and we need character, we need consistent, and everyone can come on board. You can't say, I'm not competent enough to do this. There is a space for everyone to participate. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Witness. And thank you to both for you, Witness, for bringing in some really great quotes that help to bring life to the ideas, and to really appreciated Helda's bringing in voices of students through the survey and the work that it took into doing that. So thank you both. I want to also now turn to Marion to come in and share with us. Thanks, Marion.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Good evening from Manila, Philippines. I'm Marion Tan, and I am with the Department of Community Development of the University of the Philippines. And for this evening, I would like to share with you our efforts with Masipag to build partnerships for the promotion of farmer-led agroecology. Immediately, I would like to say that our department offers undergraduate and graduate courses on community development. The aim of the course is to build capacities of grassroots organizations and communities for community development and local governance. Next slide, please. So I'd like to immediately share with you the philosophy and principles of our college. We believe in a community-engaged teaching, research, and extension work. Specifically, we espouse the principles of praxis. This is learning from grounded theorizing, especially giving value to indigenous knowledge, as well as practice. We aim to combine learning and service to the communities with the hope of building lifelong partnerships and social solidarity between the faculty, students, and our partner organizations and community. Next slide, please. At the heart and soul of our program is our field instruction program. The aim of our field instruction, or the entire program, is really to transform academic excellence to social commitment. In our fieldwork program, this is the program for our senior students. For 2 whole semesters, they live in the community, whether it be a fishing community, a farming community, an urban poor community. They live in the homes of our partner farmer leaders, or fisher folks leaders, rural women. And through the fieldwork program, we are able to integrate the theory and practice of people-centered development and community-engaged scholarship. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay. So one of our fieldwork partners for maybe the last 10-15 years is Masipag. Masipag is a national network in the Philippines of strong small-scale farmers organizations, civil society organizations or NGOs, and scientists. The program of Masipag is composed of the promotion, collection, maintenance, and protection of indigenous varieties, development of technology in sustainable agriculture. We have a program called Farmer Developed and Adapted Technology, because part of the bottom-up approach of Masipag is believing that farmers are scientists as well, and they Masipag, in partnership also with the department, is trying to promote and advocate people science, or what we call peasant science. So there's livelihood and local marketing as well, climate change, resiliency, advocacy and campaign, and organizational development. And it is in this program of organizational development where our program of community development comes in. Next slide, please. Okay, so just to show you a few photos, this was the field work of my fieldwork team. There were 4 students and myself as the faculty supervisors. We stayed and lived in a farming community, and we'll see here that the students are engaged in actual farm work, community work, and household chores. No? So by integrating with the community, to believe that the students and the faculty can better understand the concrete situations, issues, and problems, as well as the capacities of the farmers to address their immediate practical needs, as well as work towards organizing farmers to address their strategic interests. Next slide, please. So our during that SEM, this was prior the pandemic, our role was to help build the capacities of farmers for community education, participatory planning, monitoring and evaluation, and collective leadership. So this photo that you're seeing, this is actually the farmers in partnership with the students were conducting the basic education of Masipag, the Masipag orientation on sustainable agriculture. As a process of mentoring and learning by doing, what we did was the students co-facilitated with the leaders. So they were co-facilitators, and with the hope that at the end of the SEM, the farmers themselves would be able to conduct this Masipag orientation on sustainable agriculture on their own. Next slide, please. The next SEM, I handled a group of graduate students who did a research on the Masipag farmers' agroecological farming practices, because the network has a varied practice of farmer-led agroecology. And we wanted to be able to help Masipag document and draw lessons from the various agroecological farming practices. Next slide, please. Okay. This was still during the pandemic, but we were able to conduct a training on community-based participatory action research to help the farmers do a research on the impact of glyphosate on farmers and women. We know that glyphosate is a chemical used to get rid of weeds. So this is widely used in the Philippines, and it has affected the environment and the environmental health and the health of the farmers and the community. We also conducted a training on farmer-led local advocacy, lobbying, and networking to be able to help the farmers continue their advocacy against the widespread use of glyphosate. So this was during the pandemic, and all of it was difficult, but with the students, we were able to conduct the trainings online. But after the pandemic, we continued to do and actually conducted already this community-based participatory action research on the impact of glyphosate on communities. Next slide, please. Next slide. All right, I think this is my last slide because we were reminded to just be short. So this is just to show the framework of our learning and service. So we believe that the development of theories practice is an ongoing process. And we validate, critique, and even redesign the knowledge, skills, and development paradigms learned in the classroom by engaging in actual community work and helping communities address actual real-life issues and problems. And through this, through engagement in actual community work, in the promotion and implementation of agroecology, you are able to help document the agroecological practices of farmers, as well as validate, critique, or even co-design improved models and paradigms in development. So this more or less summarizes our academic philosophy. We integrate and synthesize the theory and practice of people-centered and community-engaged scholarship through actual integration with grassroots communities and organizations. So that's all for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marion. Beautiful to see the photos. Thank you very much I know it's difficult to present something as complex as an entire program for all of you in 5 minutes, but really appreciate it. I think you've all done a really nice job of it. Okay, the last presentation in this part of the panel will be David. Go ahead.
Hola, buenos días, buenas tardes a todo el mundo. Muchas gracias por la invitación. Nada, yo vengo del máster de agroecología de la Universidad de Córdoba, la Universidad Internacional de Andalucía y la Pablo de la Vida en Sevilla, en España, en el sur de España, pero con una vocación internacional y latinoamericana, ¿vale? Entonces, hace poco hemos cambiado el nombre del título, se sigue manteniendo el de agroecología, pero lo hemos cambiado a un enfoque de transformación sustentable de los sistemas agroalimentarios, porque entendemos que responde mejor justo a la pregunta que nos hacéis en este webinario. ¿Cuáles son las aptitudes y cuáles son las capacidades y las características para aportar a la transformación? Pues precisamente desde el mismo título. Siguiente diapositiva, por favor. Nosotros llevamos 30 años desde el máster, es un máster que lleva 30 años de trayectoria, en el que ha habido más de 800, 900 alumnos, tenemos recogidos más de 600 trabajos de fin de máster. Tenemos esa dualidad entre América Latina y España, fundamentalmente, aunque aparece algún alumno, alguna alumna de Europa o de África de vez en cuando, pero fundamentalmente es América Latina y España. En este máster trabajamos mucho las distintas diversidades de enfoques, de escalas, de aproximaciones, de formaciones, como planteaba también Helda en su programa de máster. Para nosotras, lo que es fundamental es la cuestión del enfoque integral, es decir, trabajamos las distintas dimensiones de la agroecología y lo hacemos desde un enfoque claramente de agroecología política, y creo que ese sería el elemento característico y diferencial de nuestro máster acá en Andalucía. En este enfoque integral hemos añadido últimamente, en los últimos 2 años, una asignatura obligatoria, porque antes le teníamos opcional de género, la hemos convertido en una obligatoria de feminismo. Hemos incluido temas de consumo, de gestión de la comida, de cocinar y temas de salud, y estamos trabajando con un nuevo laboratorio de comunicación dentro del máster para trabajar con temas de podcast y temas de redes. Y sí, efectivamente está orientado al cambio agroecológico. Siguiente diapositiva. Como ponemos en nuestras propias, en los criterios generales a la hora de valorar los distintos trabajos de fin de máster. No voy a leerlos todos, simplemente quería señalar el último y el penúltimo, el 7 y el 8. A la hora de valorar los trabajos de fin de máster, reconocemos que el trabajo de fin de máster se tiene que integrar en el acompañamiento a alguna experiencia o proceso de cambio social agroecológico. Y el punto 8, que es que el TFM incluya un enfoque de género y o feminista. Entonces, lo incluimos directamente como los criterios para validar y para evaluar el trabajo de fin de máster que nos presenten. Siguiente, por favor. Para nosotros no tenemos prácticas durante el curso porque tenemos la docencia muy concentrada para facilitar que puedan venir personas fundamentalmente de América Latina, otra vez orientado a que la gente pueda estar en sus propios territorios. Entonces, el espacio de práctica es fundamentalmente el trabajo de fin de máster. Y para nosotros los TFM son los espacios de prácticas implicadas, ¿vale? Es una cuestión de integración en procesos y en experiencias in situ. Es decir, después de los 3 meses y medio, 4 meses de docencia en Baeza, en Andalucía, cada una de las personas que están haciendo el máster marchan o a sus territorios o a otros territorios, dependiendo de algunos criterios que pongo aquí, pues utilidad, respuesta a demandas por parte de alguna experiencia o territorio, según la viabilidad, evidentemente, de acuerdo a los intereses del alumnado y también las propuestas del profesorado. Y ahí es donde logramos articular de alguna manera tanto los intereses del alumnado como las propuestas del profesorado, las distintas líneas de investigación e investigación activista con la que trabajamos el profesorado del máster. Simplemente para resaltar, de la última promoción, pues ha habido trabajos de fin de máster vinculados a procesos territoriales en la red de alternativas sustentables agropecuarias de México, las brigadas campesinas de Puerto Rico, en el Estado español con el movimiento por la soberanía alimentaria de Nos Plantamos, una experiencia de distribución colectiva en Cataluña, espacios de compra pública, movimiento vecinal y agroecología en Córdoba. el feminismo, una propuesta de investigación sobre el feminismo en el Plan Nacional de Agroecología en Uruguay, agricultura familiar local en Brasil, la agricultura urbana en Colombia. Es decir, todo esto está siempre implicado, los trabajos de fin de máster están siempre implicados en los territorios. Y eso se añade la cuestión de las innovaciones, pues por ejemplo el año pasado ya llevamos varios años con temas de ruralidad queer, con temas de identidad de género, barreras legales o temas de gastronomía. Y luego, por supuesto, siempre los aspectos técnicos agronómicos. Siguiente diapositiva. Algunas fotos de los distintos procesos y trabajos de fin de máster con los que os he comentado ahora mismo, simplemente para que veáis las fotos en distintos escenarios. Siguiente diapositiva. Y como impacto para terminar, pues simplemente pues que en estos 30 años de experiencia del máster de agroecología, pues se ha formado a más de 600 activistas en universidades, institutos de extensión, movimientos sociales, y se ha generado lo que llamamos una comunidad agroecológica de cada promoción, en cada curso, es lo que llamamos el máster 2.0, donde hay mucha integración entre las personas que están haciendo el máster ese año, entre el profesorado y el máster es en conjunto. Entendemos que somos una especie de escuela internacional donde tenemos esta mirada de agroecología política y así se nos reconoce a nivel internacional. Para nosotros es fundamental la presencia en procesos y en territorios en los que está el alumnado o en los que estamos el profesorado implicado en nuestros procesos de investigación activista. Y luego a partir de ahí, pues a veces hay quienes dan el salto al doctorado junto con su trayectoria todavía de acompañamiento a experiencias, a territorios y de investigación militante y activista. Así que por mi parte, nada más. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much, David. Just as a reminder, their questions are being posed in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. Molly and George are going to pull some of those out and ask them to the panelists. Feel free to continue to ask questions. Some of them will be addressed here in the panel, and some of them will be answered in the question and answer section themselves. Those are 4 incredible programs that were just presented, and the depth, the amount of work, and the nuance that was even be able to be shared in 5 minutes was amazing. So thank you so much to the 4 panelists. With that, I'm going to turn it over to George and Molly to bring some of the questions out.
Okay, I'll start. We've gotten some really good questions, and I encourage people to put more in. And panelists, please be brief in your replies since we're limited on time. The first question is for Helda, but I think David will also have some comments on this. The first question comes from Flo Reed. Thank you very much for joining us, Flo. How can nonprofits and social enterprises, especially those operating in the Global South, collaborate with higher education institutions, especially to document outcomes of their work with smallholder farms while giving students experiential learning opportunities? So quick answers from Helda first, and then David, if you'd like to add a little bit there.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you for the question. It's something that we have been thinking about a lot because in higher education, sometimes that's very difficult on how to collaborate with institutions, with farmers. But we are trying to do it. Unfortunately, sometimes we cannot retribute them for their work. We invite farmers to cooperate with us because in agroecology, that's it's so important to bring that knowledge to the classroom. And unfortunately, we cannot pay them back as we should. But we are fighting for it at ECOSUR. We were able to find some grants to be able to hire farmers, to hire NGOs to come to the classroom or just to visit them. And it was very interesting to learn that they really didn't want the money, but they wanted the recognition. They said that just to give them a diploma that they had participate in a higher education program was enough for them. But we just recently published a small book about it, on how to bring farmers and NGOs and grassroots organizations from the Global South to our classrooms, and what we have learned, and also what we have did wrong. So the book is in Spanish, Corazonando la Agroecología. It's called, I will put the link in the comments. And so what we have learned about it is also that those organizations want really to be part of the program. They want to have a role even in the design of our program. And we are open to do it despite it's so difficult. And I will let it there because I know that we don't have enough time. But thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Helda. And please do put that link in the chat. David, do you want to add a little there?
Sí, por nuestra parte también lo intentamos. Nos encontramos con una dificultad que son los cuestionamientos académicos por parte de las instituciones y del ministerio. Nos piden que normalmente tengan el título de máster o tengan el título de doctorado el profesorado que participa en el programa. Entonces, eso nos dificulta un poco, pero aún así lo medio escondemos o integramos a agricultores, a campesinos en nuestro programa o profesionales de cara a las visitas y, por supuesto, pues en las visitas les reconocemos y se les paga se les incorpora como profesores y como docentes del máster. Y luego hacemos un esfuerzo también importante para conseguir becas tanto para el alumnado como para que consigan hacer prácticas en estas experiencias y que en estas experiencias territoriales pues les llegue algo de dinero en el acompañamiento por recibir a los estudiantes que les mandamos desde el máster. Pero sí es un reto completamente por cuestiones administrativas y por cuestiones financieras.
Thank you, David. Very understandable and similar to what Helda has encountered. Let me just say a couple more things, and then I'm going to turn it over to George for more questions. First, those of you in the audience here, I'm seeing a lot of names of people who are working with programs. And I would encourage you to join our community of practice and to be able to listen to webinars that have already happened, but upcoming webinars as well. So please do that. And we will be sharing both a recording of this session and also resources with the registrants. George.
Thanks, Molly. So I see a question, I think, for Witness, really, which Stephen Vanek appreciates Witness's presentation because it specifically illustrates the power of multi-institutional networks. And so Stephen's really wanting to find out from Witness, were there any challenges in building that network and how were those addressed?
Okay, thank you, Steve. Thank you, George. Yes, there inevitably have been challenges in bringing everyone together on board. For example, initially it was, I think academics wanted to protect this space as their unique space where they would continue to engage without opening it up to farmers, for example. So there was the installation of the agroecology space. That was a challenge. And then, of course, it takes a bit of time for people to be convinced about, networks, selfishness of members. Others don't want to share. Some didn't even understand, there was differences in understanding of agroecology. So those are some of the challenges that we've encountered to date. But maybe just before I end, I wanted to also make a small contribution to the earlier question that was asked to my co-presenters. about the possibility of networking with the non-profit organization. I think the two presenters have done justice to that, but I also want to add that there are small things that we have been doing that matter, as universities. We have made the initial effort to reach out to the farmers and not the other way around, because to ask to wait for farmer organizations to reach out to university is condescending. We have not changed anything. So what we've done is to go out to the farmers, in a respectful manner, and say, let's collaborate and also create space for them to come and be, offer guest lectures, industrial attachment, asking them to take on board some of our students, which opens, vistas of, new vistas for the students and the academics as well. So those are small things that we've done, and we getting into the space where we're trying to co-publish results, papers with these farmers. We have not made a lot of effort, but so far that's what we are doing. We are heading in that direction. Thank you.
Thanks, Witness. And if there's a moment left, Colin, if you let me know, if not, but maybe a question to all the panelists, because I know that this is something that students ask a lot, and so do our faculties. It relates to what are some of the fields that our agroecology students go into after they graduate. If I can maybe just hear from everybody, just a few thoughts.
A lot end up in NGO sector, non-profit organization. Some end up in academia, and we celebrate that because we want to build critical mass. Others end up in government as well.
Helda, Marion, David.
Yeah, agroecology in higher education is something relatively new to the Philippines because, unfortunately, our government espouses still the use of industrial chemical-heavy farming. And therefore, the community promoting agroecology is still a very small community. And so our students who are interested and excited about farmer-led agroecology eventually join NGOs or civil society organizations who are active in the campaign for farmer-led agroecology. But hopefully it's growing. Actually, if I may just continue, we have partnered with a regional university, Central Luzon State. It's a state university, but it's a regional university that has already developed a bachelor's degree on agroecology. And it's nice because it's a breakthrough. But when we were looking at their program and curriculum, we asked how much farmers were involved in the development of their curriculum. And they said right there that not quite. So we are actually working with that university to be able to, just the way that I showed you earlier, how they will bring the farmers to actual farming communities so that they will learn directly from the farmers how to do farmer developed appropriate technology, breeding of indigenous rice varieties, participatory action research, like Witness was saying. So it's an uphill battle in terms of advocacy, but we're getting there.
Well, our program, our PhD program is still very new, but we are preparing our students to be academics. We are giving them also some tools to be good teachers, but also to promote agroecology. I think that some of our students want to be more involved with the government and with NGOs and to be activists. And we are hoping to giving them all those tools so that they can be whatever they want and dream.
Sí, por nuestra parte lo mismo. Parte en las ONGs, que es el espacio donde pueden encontrar algo de financiación, academia y luego de alguna manera minoritaria en espacios de políticas públicas, fundamentalmente a nivel municipal y algunos que se mantienen en la propia producción, es decir, dan el salto a la producción como campesinos, como productores.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, George and Molly. Yes, I mean, we're featuring 4 programs, and there's a wide range of different kind of programs in higher education out there that are oriented towards different kinds of students and different futures also. Vocational training for farmers, training for people in extension, training for people who are wanting to move into academia and teaching, into policy making. And so it's really important to think about all those different possible pathways and how we can enable people to be moving out into those community farming, policy making, activist spaces with a deep agroecology perspective. And so really appreciate, I really actually think a lot of what was presented kind of touched on a lot of the kind of key pedagogical approaches that I mentioned at the beginning, which was beautifully connected. And then just the point of making connections to across different networks of programs and thinking about how to transform kind of paradigms to enable agroecology to kind of strengthen it within universities and push back against the barriers to that, whether they be technical barriers around how to compensate people or political barriers around how to build programs in hostile to agroecology political environments is all in there. So really nice. Thank you. So we're going to turn to the second round, and we're going to hear from Charles and Irene. And the idea here was to have perspectives that weren't people who are directly engaged in running agroecology programs, but to have several other perspectives. We had a third perspective from a government, but that person had to pull out. So we're going to just hear from Charles and from Irene. And the idea is Charles comes from the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa, and Irene from the Agroecology Europe Youth Network. I asked them each 2 different questions for Charles, and I'll pose it to you, Charles, and then I'll bring yours in next, Irene. But the question to Charles was, how is AFSA seeing agroecology education and research at higher education institutions as an important area to grow agroecology and food sovereignty? So over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Colin, and I much appreciate this opportunity to be here today and speak on this very critical subject. So starting July of this year, at AFSA, we launched a new strategy that goes up to 2029, 5-year strategy. So this Charles goes muted.
Charles, sorry to interrupt. Your sound is a little bit hard to hear you. I wonder if you might switch to your microphone on your computer. It's distorted.
Okay, I'm going to turn off this headset. That is the problem.
Much better.
Yeah, it's much better.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much for that. Apologies. Yeah, so I was starting to say that a few months ago, we launched a new strategy at AFSA. And this strategy has got 6 intervention areas. And we have a theory of change that links into this strategy. So one of the 6 intervention areas is knowledge generation, knowledge co-creation, because our main mandate at AFSA is to influence policies, sovereign food systems. So our work largely is around policy influencing, but through that pillar, we are now moving towards evidence-based policy advocacy. And in that, we were convinced that we need to, yes, generate some data. We've been doing a lot of research, but through consultants. But we thought we need now to get out to influence, but also meaningfully collaborate with universities. Yeah, so because we acknowledge that universities are very, very important when it comes to capacity building, training, when it comes to research, when it comes to providing services, engaging community, and all those are very, very critical, in the policy formulation. So we moved out to engage with this constituency. We are not a university ourselves, but we acknowledge the power that universities have and the role and the unique position that they occupy. So we already had a 3.5-year initiative with support from the EU, working with 16 consultant partners in 3 countries, developing a decision support tool to support transitions to agroecology. But in this also, we have developed an agroecology training course. It's a short course. It's online with the partners, but also we've supported, the living labs to develop, demonstration, training curricula, training programs on agroecology on site. And most important is there are students who have been on this program, more than 10 students from both Africa and Europe. On this initiative, we have 7 universities, but majority of these are in East Africa, Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. And we have others from Europe, so we have that kind of exchange. Then we proposed to the McKnight, and they accepted to support us on a 3-year initiative, Agroecology as a Bold Climate Solution, a 3-country project. And what we have done mainly here is to link the university professors to the farmers through the healthy soil food centers. AFSA in 2021 set up 16 healthy soil food centers in 10 countries, but these were not initially meaningfully engaging with the local universities. They were also not so much in research, so we had to build their capacities in participated action research, but also to create the bridges between these local soil centers with a local university within their vicinity. And these are meaningfully working together. And there's a lot of learning for both the university. We are influencing them, how they do research, how they do teaching. They're starting to think different. They're starting to initiate new initiatives in their universities, but also the local soil center is also changing in terms of their orientation, and the farmers are also learning a lot. So it's a very big collaboration that's building up. And then the last one that I want to end with, because of the 5 minutes, is the ASANE initiative, the African Sciences of Agroecology, Nutrition, and Ethnobotany. This is an initiative that we launched in Accra, in Ghana, in August this year. Well, there we had 12 countries and more than 25 universities that were represented in there. But we have now grown that network. As we speak now, we have more than 100 university faculty, university experts, PhDs, professors in agroecology, in botany and other related sciences in nutrition and etc. So this community that we are building together with the support of the Oak Foundation and the Global Biodiversity Network, Global Biodiversity Foundation, is one, yes, we need to work together in terms of developing curricula in these universities that are on agroecology, food sovereignty, but also short courses in these universities on agroecology. Then students, connecting these students to our network. AFSA is a network of networks. So we want to meaningfully connect students to our members, but also students to exchange between countries and even continents, and even staff, faculty in these universities. As Witness said, like in the whole of Zimbabwe, there's no agroecology program. And I think there are 3 or 4 countries in Africa that have an agroecology academic program taught in a local university. So we believe this can change, and ASANE is coming to influence in that area. Also issues around policy, issues around building strong networks. How can we meaningfully connect the academics, the ivory tower, the professors, the land people, to the civil society, to the social movement, to the activists, to the farmers, to the local communities, so they can meaningfully co-create knowledge for agroecology. So we largely want to influence, to change, to remodel, the way teaching is happening in the universities, the way research is happening. Like Witness said, we are fronting the emancipatory participatory action research. So the knowledge that is being generated is more impactful, is more relevant, is more place-based, but is also more emancipating than just genetic knowledge for the sake, but knowledge that addresses the local solutions, the local problems, and brings local solutions. Yeah, so what we still need to do is to continue mapping within, yes, we have a database of which university is offering which academic program, or which country is implementing which agroecology project. We've done that kind of mapping, but we need to do that more. And we need to go ahead now and formalize our engagement. We are thinking about convening the first Africa Agroecology Research Conference. We are already putting up a proposal on that, and want to bring all these people from the university together so we can share the knowledge, because all we are aiming at is to build a long-lasting collaboration, the social movements meaningfully collaborating with the universities, so we can have a more impactful and long-lasting change. I could pause here for now, Colin, and if there are questions, I'll be happy to come and say more. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. So we'll come back to the questions after Irene comes in. And just to say, it's really inspiring to see a network and organization like AFSA organizing to try to figure out how to engage effectively with universities, academic institutions, researchers. It's powerful for the impetus for that to be coming from and the investment that AFSA has made, including through your work, Charles, in that is really fantastic. So thank you for sharing. So we'll turn it over to Irene. The question that I put together was, what are the particular needs of young people around agroecology education, and what should programs be doing to ensure they stay connected to their needs and interests? So come on in.
Thank you so much, Colin and Amelie, for inviting me over. So I'll try to pick up from where Charles left, actually, talking about how to connect academia with realities on ground, because in the end, I'm here to represent Agroecology Youth Network Europe, but I have multiple hats. So I'm also an applied researcher. So from my experience working with agroecology through living labs and through the youth initiatives at the European level, I see that the needs of young people in agroecology go far beyond the training and knowledge transfer. They're really deeply tied to territory, identity, and the politics of transformation. So connecting again to having a political agroecology. So I believe, talking to various people, that young people need learning spaces that are anchored in real territories. So agroecology is fundamentally place-based. Of course, we are also connecting to the global, but we have to act local to then have ripple effects globally. So it's not something you can fully understand through a classroom or webinar, format. Young people learn best, I think, by spending time in a class, in landscapes, in real life context. And I saw that also formally being a coordinator of a foundation. We brought through a program, it was called the Farm Experience Internship, how people learned best, in a setting where they were communicating with different stakeholders. So observing the soil, for example, the weeds, the water cycles, the livestock, the community dynamics, and really embracing this local ecological knowledge is what brings these needs fulfilled. And being based here in Portugal, I have an example of a living lab that we are collaborating with called Mont Silveira. And us young people, young researchers, really learned by doing through, for example, walking in the field, reading the compaction through bioindicators, or collectively experimenting on something like, for example, cover crops. Yeah, we really need to be inside this setting. So to contribute to these learning experiences, I feel that we really need to boost these real life experiences on farms and in communities. So programs need to in long-term embedded trainings, I believe. So not isolated workshops, but something that youth can engage with in a long-term process. As you know, we really need to feel connected to this movement, these places, the seasonal changes, the relationships we build, and feel responsible of outcomes. So yeah, linking it back to communities of practice, yeah, we need this sense of belonging to drive our interest. And young agroecologists usually don't come from a farming background. Me, myself, I don't, for example, and I'm, educated in that. So returning to the rural areas, or, just having access to land, for example, would bring us back to feeling part of this community of practice. So it doesn't feel isolated and fragmented. And it keeps us connected as a network. So through territorial working groups, for example, peasant movement and transdisciplinary exchanges, this will allow us to see ourselves as part of a bigger picture, I believe. So the Agroecology Youth Network in Europe, for example, has a lot of these synergies and movement in the political sphere as well as in the emotional sphere, because we really feel like a group that is moving towards a shared dream, and that's built by our own individual dreams. But at least we have a vision and we feel a sense of belonging and a willingness to co-create. And again, agroecology cannot be one. It's really plurality of agroecology. So many programs still treat agroecology as a set of techniques, composting, crop rotation, etc., cover crops, biological pest control. But what is really important, I feel that it's left out, is this plurality, the movement, the practice, the political sphere, the science. And yeah, of course, there's also this climate anxiety in these moments in our generation, in Generation Z, for example, that is causing, identity questions, land precarity, and all structural inequality. So I think education should be inclusive in the sense that it should take into account gender and intersectionality problems, political ecology and power relations, governance and territorial rights, traditional and local ecological knowledge systems, ecological literacy, and also the ability to read the territory, because we need to see it socially and ecologically. And, just meaningful participation is important. So acting within the movement, so feeling that we have this power, this agency to act is also really important. So co-designing activities, lead working groups, propose territorial projects, co-create some research together, and have real responsibility will bring, I think, youth at the forefront of these changes and the feeling that we also can take part in this transformation. And yeah, also we need continuity, because stable infrastructures that support this long-term engagement are fundamental. And the biggest frustration, of course, that we struggle with is this fragmentation. So projects start and then disappear, these funding cycles that end, they don't have a sustainability plan, networks dissolve. So we know that agroecology is low-paced, and it's the process oftentimes more important than the outcomes, and that through these projects, maybe some ripple effects will come out of that. But also, we need stability and support long-lasting relationship with the land, with the communities, with the ecosystem, mentorship and stable funding, for example, and learning environments like the living labs that I was telling you about that I'm involved in, and many other real-life contexts that can bring and spark a sense of community that we oftentimes think shouldn't be at the center, but it's actually, I think, the core of agroecology. So if we keep this consistency alive and we build on these conditions, I think that young people themselves can root in their own territories, bringing dignity, creativity, and collective powers to them, and then allow this global interaction to strengthen their territorial actions. So by collecting all of these opinions, I think this was most of all what I got out of it. And yeah, I'm interested to take it further into the discussion if anyone has any other questions. For now, thank you so much.
Thank you. That was really insightful and great to have that perspective added into the mix. I think we only have time for maybe a couple of questions. So George and Molly, I think, have prepared to present a question to each of you.
Thank you so much to both of you. I think your responses also really responded to some of the earlier question on collaborations and how important they are between academia and social movements. I think that in agroecology, there is an overt focus on the science and practice. And so often the social and political gets missed. So I'm wondering so maybe this one is to Charles. How do we encourage a better balance between the different aspects of agroecology, ensuring that students have a meaningful engagement with both the biophysical and practice-oriented elements, along with the political, the cultural, and the social dimensions?
Yeah, thank you so much, George, and thank you for that question. Well, I look at agroecology as a science of relationships in general. And to me, relationships are not only between other forms of life, like the lives we see, the crops, the plants, the trees, the animals, but relationships between even us, human beings. So when we talk about ecological interaction, it is also how we interact as human beings. And that shapes a lot the social movement aspect of agroecology. How I interact with you, George, how I interact with Irene, how I interact with Colin, that is agroecology itself. And it's ecological, it's science itself. So then before we bring in the cultures and others, first of all, me interacting with you alone is an ecological process, is an ecological interaction. So now taking it from that level is we live in an ecosystem. The world we live in is an ecosystem, and our survival, our resilience is all tagged on how we. Oh, my daughter has joined us. Yeah, yeah. How well we come together. It all depends on how well we build synergies, because one individual is vulnerable, but a collective is stronger. So that is the main motivating factor for building social movements, for us coming together. So the social aspect, the cultural aspect, but like I started, it's a biological process itself when me and Colin are relating in some way. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Charles. I'm going to hand it over to Molly.
Well, a lot of questions, Irene, and thank you so much for your presentation. But I know that land access is a huge issue for young people in Europe. And I'm wondering if the agroecology movement could help youth to access land. What do you think?
So thank you for this question, because it's a crucial one here, but everywhere in the world. I think it can. because we have like various examples across Europe and also across the globe of that working out. So for example, in France, we have Terre des Liens. It's like a commons-based model that bypasses the private land market, for example. So it's basically a citizen-supported land trust that buys farmland and leases it long-term to young agroecological farmers. So they secured almost over 300 farms led by youth, and it prevents land speculation and guarantees agroecological use of the land. So that's also bringing some hope, this commons-based model that the French managed to push through. And there's other various examples of other countries, La Via Campesina, most of all, and the peasant youth movement, and their push for like land redistribution, anti-speculation policies, and also support to young farmers is like outstanding. So we are inspired by them and wish that these movements are also translated here in Europe. We have the European coordination, of course, that is translating ECVC, like obviously what La Via Campesina brought forward to Latin America. And yeah, these are the examples of hope that I have, and also very inspired by the Movimento Sem Terra in Brazil, for example, another inspiring initiative where it started from grassroots and it really brought the social justice alive and at the center. So we have some hope. It has to be scaled out. These initiatives are right now very scattered. I think in Europe we have more, but that I don't know of. But yeah, it's those are systems that work.
Thank you, Irene. That's really inspiring, because this is a problem globally of young people and new farmers getting access to land. I'm going to turn things over to Colin to wrap us up. So we're almost out of time.
Thank you, Charles, Irene, Molly, George, everybody. It was a great panel. It would have been lovely to hear from somebody representing a government perspective, because I think that's really important to think about how we get the ear of policymakers. It's a vital arena for the kind of change we want to see in higher ed and in agroecology and food systems more broadly. I just want to mention a couple of things. We're going to follow up by email with everyone probably next week with some of the resources that were mentioned today, a link to the recording, links to the different programs that were presented. So stay tuned for that. I also wanted to, Molly mentioned it earlier, but for people who are educators and involved as teachers or running programs in higher education, if you're interested in our Let's Eat community of practice, please reach out to us. My email is included in one of the answers to the questions, but George, maybe you could share your email in the chat. And I also just wanted to mention that we're building out a repository or a learning library for curricula for courses on agroecology and different curricular materials, and we'll be rolling that out in the next several months, and so keep an eye out for that. But with that, I wanted to turn it over to Oliver to close us out.
Well, thanks very much, Colin, and what an inspiring session that we have today. And many thanks to all of you for sharing your expertise and experience with all of us today. What I'm taking away from today's rich exchange, I mean, transformative education for agroecology is holistic, participatory, and has to shift traditional top-down teaching models to a co-learning process involving not just the teachers, but the students, farmers, and community as well. It is also experiential, practice, and place-based. We've heard it very often today. Education is not confined within the four corners of the classroom. It has to be complemented with, if not start from, hands-on experience in real farm and food systems settings. I'm also taking away today that co-learning and horizontal dialogues are key. Students should not remain passive with the expert teachers who are simply providing all the inputs to the students, but rather be an active agents of learning and co-learning itself. I'm also taking away that it is really essential to develop specific core competencies or skills of students that prepare them for a complex future. Observation, attention to details, effective dialogue, communication, participation, and reflection are all absolute must. These are crucial in developing critical and systems thinking, allowing one to connect social, political, ecological, and economic dimensions of agroecology and of the current food systems. And also from our speakers, I also wanted to lift the dimension of agency, which goes beyond professional realm, but also at the personal level, allowing one to take responsibility for their own learning and become motivated agents for social and ecological transformation, as well as, the importance of building networks and social movements, as it is where learning occurs, and it also reinforces learning itself. So we're really, really super grateful in today's webinar that we're able to talk about not only what people need to learn, but also how they learn and who they can possibly become when preparing them to navigate and actively shape a sustainable agroecological future. So thank you very much for sharing. Thanks for staying with us. Merci a tous. Gracias a todos. Muito obrigado.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Un abrazo, muchas gracias.
Gracias.
Bye.